Shalom, shalom. This week's Parsha is Parshat Beshalach. And throughout the years of me reading this Parsha, I always had a question that bothered me, and I never had an answer. And this morning I had a thought, and it makes sense to me, and I'd like to share it with you. Okay, so let's sum up really quickly. As we know, the Jewish nation had the great Exodus. They left Egypt. They were traveling in the desert, and after a few days, Paro's heart was hardened by God, and he decided to pursue the nation, and he gets all geared up. He brings all the chariots and all the horsemen and fierce army, and decides to chase after the nation, get them back or whatever. And so he goes on hot pursuit, and finally, after a few days, they catch up, and the Israelites are now locked between this fierce army and the water. There is no place for them to go, nowhere. They're locked in, and they kind of freak out. And it says that they cried out to God, and they kind of turned to Moshe, and they said, were there no graves in Egypt that you had to bring us out here to die in the desert? Very chutzpahdik. Okay, and they were like freaking out, and God tells Moshe, what are you yelling out to me? Do something. And he tells him, of course, to lift the staff, and the water splits, and they end up walking right through on dry land, where then God will, as when they get through and the Egyptians come, and he tumbles them in the water, destroys them utterly, obliterates the nation in front of the eyes of the Jewish people. They get closure. They see their enemies suffer a horrible death, and they're feeling like this huge sense of gratitude, an overwhelming sense of connection to God. They all of a sudden, everything came together, and they just felt, they broke out in song. They broke out in the Az Yashir. And this song is so special. It's so meaningful, and they were so elated and so above. It was one of these connective moments where this song that they sang was very special. It was really above time and space in this poetry of a song that we know holds in it the past, present, and future. Az Yashir, we will sing. This is a song we sing in the present about the past, and will be sung in the future with a future redemption, and it holds all of this together for us. And it was a hugely amazing, transformative moment, really, for the nation. And this is a song that they sang. And then what happens? This is where my question is going to come in. It says that Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, she takes out her toph, and she goes out with the women, and she starts singing. But we always were taught that she sang the Az Yashir, and maybe she sang the whole song, I don't know. But what does the Bible record? It doesn't record this lengthy, long song that we sing every day. It's just a couple of sentences. And what are those sentences? I want to read it to you. It says, Vata'an lahen Miriam. Miriam answered them. Okay, also this is the question that people ask. Answered who? They weren't asking a question, they sang a song. What was this answer? But she answered them, and it says, Shiru laHashem ki go'o ga'a sus v'rachot rama v'yam. That's it, this one sentence. And what does it say? Sing to Hashem, for he is exalted above the arrogant, having hurled the horse and its rider in the sea. Doesn't say the rest of the song. That's it. Then we go on with the narrative, with the story. So why this one sentence? Why is this, out of everything, why is this the sentence that we're told? What is it trying to teach us? And this is what I think it is. Right before they were saved, you see the Jewish nation. It says they cried out to God. Okay, so they believed in God, really. They cried out to God. They complained against Moshe. They complained, you took us out, you did this. All of a sudden, they doubted Moshe. I don't think that they didn't think there was a God, and that God wasn't, capable of everything, the one God and everything. I think they still had that. But they doubted Moshe, you did this, you took us out, you caused us all this issues, all this strife. They didn't believe, and they even though believed in God, they couldn't conceive. They couldn't conceive of a possible plan for their salvation. This is what the eyes saw, and we know. I mean, if you're being realistic, scientific man, you see the situation, you see what your odds are. They're basically zero odds of surviving this. So, they cried out and they lost their faith. And it's understandable, because according to what the eyes can see, they don't see any sort of salvation. And they had this great promise of going out and going into a promised land, not of going into the sea, drowning and dying, or being butchered, the whole nation, by this strong nation with the horse and chariots and fierce. So I think when the nation sang the song, and they sang the very same words as Miriam said, right? These words are in the big all the words in the Az Yashir. So it says that, right? That the arrogant, Hashem is exalted above the arrogant, having hurled horse and rider in the sea. Now, what Israel was saying is that the Egyptians were so arrogant, and they could never conceive of letting this little slave nation leave and become their own people, and it's sort of a victory for them. And that arrogance that they saw, thinking they were so strong and so mighty that the Israelites would never have a chance, and then seeing them defeated. That's what the Israelites, that's what the men were singing. But when Miriam went out with her Toph, and she sang what she was trying to say, okay, we're told so much in this one little pasuk. It says, Miriam the prophetess, okay? Miriam the one who knew there would be a salvation. And despite what her eyes saw, she didn't doubt it for 1 minute. Her, and we're told the women as well, had faith in God despite the odds, despite what they saw, despite all that shikul, all that evaluation, all of, the reality in front of their eyes. They still had a faith. Now, we're told that the men didn't have that very same faith. And so when we're told Miriam the prophetess, she knew in a prophetic vision, and she was the sister of Aaron, because Aaron was also somebody who didn't doubt. He didn't doubt Moshe. He didn't doubt God. He wasn't really a part of all the men that doubted. He was a different level. It doesn't say Moshe, because Moshe was the one who's also being questioned. Okay? But the nation, in their haughtiness, in their arrogance, because arrogance is not just for somebody who's rich and mighty, okay? The poor downtrodden can be arrogant as well. They can be arrogant in the way they think that they know everything, that they think they can see everything, that they think that they can foretell the future. And that was a problem. That was a problem of the men. They didn't believe, because based on what they could see, it didn't add up. The women didn't that wasn't part of their calculations. They said, okay, we don't see it, but they knew that somehow they would make it through. And so when Miriam and the women were answering, they were answering the men. And then they said to the men, you're singing because the arrogant that you see tossed into the sea and destroyed, and look at the arrogant in the end, they couldn't understand God's plan, and they saw God and they understand God now, the nation. But you men, you have to understand. Okay, keep this in mind. God shows us all what he shows us and how he shows us, and the way he does things and why he does things is all for us to learn a lesson. And the lesson that the nation, the men needed to incorporate, and what the women were singing, is that the arrogant need to see that there is something above what we humans can understand, what our eyes can see, and what science tells us to be 100% possible, or very highly likely anyway, is that there's a God. Don't be arrogant and think that if you can't understand it and you can't see it, there's no way it could happen. When there's a God in this world, and there's a God in this world, then anything he wants can happen. And not to lose that faith, not to be arrogant. So they were answering, they're saying, learn from this. Learn not to be arrogant. Arrogant exists in all sorts of ways. Don't just think that they're arrogant because they were strong and mighty and they didn't believe, that God would save you. But it's being reflected back at you because you didn't believe either. Now take that right now and learn from that. Learn from that lesson. Don't go back to being haughty. Ever take this moment and hold on to it. hold on to it and know that God can do whatever. And this is the metaphor of just, hurling them in the horse and the rider in the sea. Meaning the horse and the rider, it represents the horse is going in the rider that controls it. And that's what we have to understand, is that we think that man and all his machinations is in charge of everything that goes on, and that the powerful are directing everything, and that we have to fall into that because that's what we see. But no, God can take all those plans and he could just hurl it into the sea, gone with it, and his plan will endure in the end. And remember that, hold on to that, have faith in that, and don't lose that. And that's why that sentence is vital, because this is something we need to hold on to through generations and generations until this very day, where we see powerful nations that surround us, and we worry about our very existence. How can it be that we will thrive? And sometimes we feel we're pushed up against to a dead end, and there's no way we'll make it out. We're gonna make it out. We're gonna make it out. Believe like the women believe. Don't lose that. Always remember. And we will prevail, and God will be with us, and we will walk on dry land amidst the turbulent waters on the right, left, and all around. Shabbat Shalom.